Welcome to the Story Nerd podcast, Hook Your Reader episode. This is where we give authors our professional advice about their query letters and first 10 pages writing samples. My name is Valerie Francis. I'm an author and a story editor, and I teach women who are writing in all genres how stories work so they can finish their books faster and without frustration.
And I am Kathleen Foxx, or Kat. I am an agent with the Rights Factory based out of Toronto and also an editor at Fox Editorial.
Now, we're just getting started with the Hook Your Reader episodes. So while writers are preparing their works for submission, this is the second Ask Me Anything episode, and our next episode will indeed be a query letter and submission review. So stay tuned for that. But for today, Kathleen is going to answer more of your questions and answers because we got so many of them, we couldn't get through them all in the last episode. Now, before we get started, as always, we would love it if you could help other writers find our show by leaving a rating and review. Apple Podcast listeners, you can do it from your phone. Go to the show's landing page, scroll to the bottom, click the 5 stars. It is that simple. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. All right, Kathleen, are you ready for Ask Me Anything round 2?
Bring it. I am ready.
All right. The first question, and these questions are kind of all over the map. So the first one is about the timing of a query. Is there a quote unquote best time of the year to go out on submission to editors? So this is assuming you already have an agent. What do you think?
Really the only time that I say we, there are always exceptional circumstances. And I can't speak for everybody. Speaking for myself and my own experiences, we generally stay away from the Christmas holidays, the New Year's holidays. For US editors, that is kind of like the biggest publishing area in the world. So most of them are concentrated there and most of them are in New York City. So we typically, they will kind of start shutting things down for the year after the US Thanksgiving. And then they get back up and running, usually around the first week of January, second week of January. So we generally don't submit in that time unless there's some kind of circumstance, an editor says like, I don't care what time of year it is, I want this in my inbox. We'll be like, okay. August is kind of another time where many of them take some holidays, some of them in July as well. Like people take holidays at any time of year. So it's hard to, you might submit to someone and you'll get an auto response back saying, oh, I'm on holidays for the next 3 weeks or whatever. So it is what it is. But I would say it's going to be in their submission box anyway when they get back from vacation. So if you don't know about it, or let me try that again. We don't generally send them during any kind of holiday. So Easter, for example, we would wait until the Tuesday or the Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, other than that, pretty much anything goes.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up to that. Since this question is specifically about when you would go out on submission to a publishing house, is there a best time of year for writers who are looking for an agent to query the agent?
Probably the same guidelines, but for me, like it's in my inbox. I don't pay attention to what day it got sent. So, and when I say in my inbox, I don't mean I'm getting emailed. I mean it's in my query manager thing, right? So it's in the pile of queries. I don't pay attention necessarily to the date that it came in. So if somebody's like, "Oh my goodness, I work all the time. I'm taking Christmas Day off. I'm going to send my query to Kat because that's the only day I have off." I'm not going to look at it and say, "Oh my goodness, you sent it on Christmas Day." That's a no. Like I would never do that, right? Um, I think it becomes more important when agents are submitting to editors.
Assuming that the agent's query window is open, because sometimes agents close to queries for their sanity. I'm sure it's for your sanity.
Mine is closed right now.
Well, there you go. And we're
Yes.
recording this on, what is this, April the 16th,
Yeah.
2026. But it'll open again.
Yes, yes. I started off with saying, like, "Query me whenever you like. I will get to everybody who sends me a query." And I quickly was snowballed, and I it's just not possible. Like, within a month, I had over, like, 1,100 queries, and there's just no way I have time to do that. When we go through our queries, that is all on our own time. Like, we're not getting paid for that, and we have clients that we are managing, right? So those they have to come first. So there are times when, like, now I'm closing it intermittently so I can try and stay on top of it, but even still, it's a lot.
And to find out when your query window opens, I am sure if they subscribe to your new Substack newsletter, they'll find out when your query window opens again.
Yes, exactly.
Put that
That's
little plug in
exactly the
for you.
yeah. Thanks. Yeah, on my website, on my socials, in the newsletter, that kind of thing.
I did the same thing when I started as an editor. My window to accept new clients was always open, and I very quickly had to shut down and only open certain times of the year because I just was overwhelmed. I just couldn't keep up
Yeah.
with all the requests and I mean, it's a happy
Yep.
problem. I'm not gonna
It
lie.
it is. It is. It's a happy problem. Even with that, like, I'm already almost booked for the rest of the year. So I just
And it's
it's
April.
yeah, it's April and I'm booking the last couple of spots for the year. And that's just the way that the industry is. Like, it's a good problem to have for sure, but
We'll
yeah,
take
it
it.
it does get
We'll take
overwhelming.
it.
Yeah,
Well, and so that means that anyone who is looking for our thoughts on their query letter and their submission pages, this Hook Your Reader episode thing on StoryNerd is actually a great idea because if they can't
indeed.
get your advice any other way until the end of 2026, go to storynerd.ca and you'll get all the information. If you're on my mailing list, my inner circle, you have already heard about it. If you That's how you hear about everything first, is if you're in my inner circle. I'm just going to be honest. And that's where all the first chances are. So if you've not already subscribed, go to valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle, get on that list, and you'll get in the queue a whole lot faster. Because by the time this episode goes out, we will have already gotten maybe 25 or 30 um, things to review. Anyway, which is good. Keep them coming because we can't
Mhm.
do this without you. So keep them coming. All right. Next question is about comparative titles, comp titles. How do you choose comp titles for a manuscript that could be categorized into several genres at once? Is there a guiding principle behind that choice? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, there's definitely not a blanket answer for that because every project is its own individual thing. There's always several things to look at. So if we're if I think I mentioned this in the last episode, if we have comps, sorry, if we have a book, a manuscript that kind of captures two completely different genres and is kind of a mashup, um, we are going to want to draw attention to that so that because if you don't, then it almost is like, well, if you're not pointing out that it's a genre mashup, then it might look like you don't know which one to put it in. So if you do truly have a very blended genre, right? A and B, I would put emphasis on that and choose your comps so that it is in category A and category B, like this meets this, because those are often very, very compelling. You immediately see like I think the example I used last time was Back to the Future meets You've Got Mail. I have no idea what that would look like. Those are two of my favorite movies in two completely different genres. Back to the Future for me is like I would love to see some kind of a comp to that in my inbox one day. And same with You've Got Mail. If I had something that blended those two together, I would definitely want to like I would be curious to read more about that. So it's not necessary like there's no guideline or set of rules to follow when you're talking about comps and especially when you're trying to compare to two different genres. If you have a straight thriller, you're going to want your comps to be thrillers. That's where they're going to sit. That's their best friends on the shelves, right? They're going to sit beside their best friends. Um, when you have something that blends two different things, you want to highlight that for sure, but still make them very, very good comps. But the whole idea is to draw attention to it, right? Make it compelling, and give it that vibe, right? Like you want the agent to have the vibe so they can start to picture it and feel what it might be about before they start reading the plot paragraphs.
And I just have to, because I'm me, I have to put in my 2 cents worth. Um, this is a totally different way of looking at your story than you had when you were writing your story. This comes down to the discussion of genre. And an issue that we have in our industry, the irony of it all, is that we have a problem with the language in that genre isn't one static thing. It means different things to different people depending on how you're approaching the book. Are you approaching it as a reader, as a writer, as an agent, as a publisher? We all have different ways of looking at the same book. So when you are writing your book, you could be thinking of it as an action story, which is the way I see Back to the Future, purely from the creating the story in the first place perspective. However, it's marketed as a comedy. And you know what? It is a comedy because I see genre as it's like, pick from each of the 5 columns. I use the story grid genre clover approach to genre because it makes the most logical sense for me when I'm creating the story. Because one of the biggest issues we as writers have when we're writing a story is that there's so many decisions to make, and it just hurts our brain really quickly, and it can get out of control really quickly. Looking at genre as, okay, well, the plot is an action story, but the style is comedy, it helps. It just helps create order in your mind. And that's great. But now that the manuscript's done, you've done the creation. Now you're writing a query letter or you're getting ready to go out on submission. You're not thinking like a writer anymore. Now you're thinking like a salesperson, like an agent. Like, how would you describe your book to the reader? And that's where the comp titles come in. As Seth Godin says, you got to give he talks about a customer because he's talking about all industries. Readers are our customers. You got to give them a hook to hang your product or service on. So the comp title is X meets Y, and that creates an image in the person's mind like, oh, okay, I have a sense of what that might be. I know what sandbox that story is playing in now. Okay. All right. Good. Well, okay. Moving on. I just reread that question. I think we hit it all. Next question is about word count. This is a whole Pandora's box. What is the best word count, Kathleen, for a paranormal rom-com? Lay it
Probably
on me.
in the range of like 300,000 words. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Definitely don't do that. Most books these days in today's publishing landscape in most genres are going to be somewhere in the range of like 70 to 90, 75 to 95, somewhere like that. There is a little bit of leeway when you get into things like historical fiction, science fiction, fantasy, because there's generally a lot of world building. So that takes up more space. And I don't mean that in the way that you have to explain and set that up in such a way that it's explanatory and taking up all these extra words, right? The characters in that book that's their world. So they don't have to explain. You have to creatively and subtly weave that in, that world building. But it does take some extra work because the reader has to understand that world, right? So that makes sense. But a rom-com, unless it's like a sci-fi rom-com, it's
Well, it's
generally,
paranormal.
yep,
Who
yeah.
knows?
most books are going, including rom-coms, are going to be more or less within that range, 70 to 100, let's just say. It's more important now than ever to have books that are no longer than 100,000. And yes, there are always going to be exceptions to that. But the bigger the book, the more expensive it is to print. And if you're a debut novelist, that's risky. It's risky because there's no way of knowing until it's published how well it's going to sell. So, and from a publisher's perspective, they don't know what that ROI is going to be. So they're going to want to take less of a risk, right? So if you're under 100,000 words, that's good. So I would keep rom-coms or pretty much any category if you're a debut novelist within 70 to, just under 100,000. I would say a rom-com on the lesser side of that. A thriller would be on the, 95,000 maybe. So I hope that answers the question.
And we're talking about this is a full length novel.
Yeah. Yes.
Novellas are shorter, and
Yes.
there are writers who really love to write novellas, and there are agents who want novellas. And then there are agents who specify, I do not want novellas. So in terms of word count, the editor in me just wants to say, know what it is you're writing. Are you setting out to write a novella? Is it a novella paranormal rom-com? Because that's going to be different. But if it's a full-length novel, then, everything Kathleen just said. And from a craft perspective, the reason that, like Kathleen said, things like historical, science fiction, it's because the world is totally made up. The reader doesn't have any pre-existing knowledge of your world necessarily. So you have to explain it to them. Like I think of Philippa Gregory's work. That's historical. That's way historical. So most readers are not going to be experts in the 16th century. So you have to
Right.
take more page space to explain the context that the story is taking place in. But you tell them what they need to know when they need to know it. You still don't just write on and on and on. It's not a graduate thesis. You're still telling a story. Okay, we have a few more minutes. I'm just looking down through the list and seeing what question I will ask you for our last question. Okay. This is kind of attached to the one about what's the best time to go out on submission. All right. Do agents work with their clients to put a submission package together? Does that depend on the agent? Does it depend on the author? How does that work?
Yeah. So in anytime I'm offering representation, we always talk about like the communication and how the process all works. And for me anyways, I am very open to, like some of my clients want to know every time they have a rejection come in. Some of them are like, please don't tell me the rejections. I only want to know if we get an offer. That's totally fine. So in that way, I work with each of my clients depending on their comfort level and how much they want to be involved. Um, it is nice to know that they want to be involved and that they're excited for that process. I have yet to come across someone who's not excited about the process. But that just speaks to, the work that they put in and the effort and the pride that they have in this project that they've completed. Um, but in terms of putting a submission package together, that very much depends on A, how much they want to be involved, but B, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. So when you are writing fiction, that's a completely different process. The same thing happens where I'm building a submissions list. That I build a submissions list. So I research all of the different imprints and which ones are going to be best, and then I look at, okay, which editor there will be best, because we can only submit to one editor and an imprint, and then there's a whole different kinds sets of rules about that. But um, and I will usually ask my client, do you know of any editors that you want this in front of? Like, do you have any connections to editors? Did you meet an editor at a conference who said that they wanted to look at it? You know, it could be anything. So I try to involve them in whatever capacity they want. Um, but the differences between fiction and nonfiction. So fiction, we send the pitch, the manuscript, but with nonfiction, it is we have a proposal, and the manuscript, depending on what it is, may or may not be finished. We often sell it on proposal without the manuscript finished. Um, so if they have a proposal, most times they'll have that proposal ready, and that's what they pitch us with. There are times, and I do have some clients where I've actually reached out to them and signed them, and they were working on a book or whatnot, and they don't have a proposal ready. So I will help them make the proposal, put it together. So it is very collaborative. The pitch that I send out is usually like I'll start based off of whatever's in their query letter. So that's really important too, an important aspect of the query letter. It it has to be good because that's what we're going to base our pitch to the editors off of. Um, and like sometimes I'll get the input of the author, like it's their project, right? And I'm selling it or trying to sell it on their behalf. So I might say like, hey, this is the pitch that I put together. Do you have any thoughts on it? And they're like, yeah, sounds good to me, send it out. Or, hey, can we switch this? I think it's more, it's their project. So in most cases, I'll do that. Uh, but yeah, like it's usually quite collaborative. The only thing that I work on myself is the submissions list because we don't, um, like email addresses and stuff. We just keep that in-house, I guess I could say.
Yes, you do. You
Yeah,
don't want
yes.
that getting out.
No. But I will say, and every agent does things differently. I put together a spreadsheet so that my clients can see who I've submitted to, which imprint, which parent company, the date I submitted, and any responses that have come back so that they can keep track of that. And that's something that I share with them so that they can access it anytime they want. And I find that to be better than emailing them every time we get a pass because that
Yeah.
can be hard. So that way
Yeah.
they can look at those at their own pace. Um, but yeah, every agent has their own way of doing things, and that's what works for me.
How long does it take to hear back from acquisitions agents or editors?
Oh, it can be within hours, it can be weeks, it can be months. It just
So they
depends.
don't necessarily have a turnaround time?
Nope. If it's something that catches their interest, it's it's helpful for me when they send back a confirmation of receipt saying like, wow, this looks amazing. I can't wait to dive in. It doesn't mean anything, but it just, it confirms that they've received it at least. Um, and sometimes, sometimes we can get uh, what looks to be an offer and then it turns into an offer within days. Those are exciting times. The ones, but like they can sit on submission for months and months, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. There's no specific turnaround time for editors. It's just, yeah, sometimes we don't even hear back, which is it's a sad part of the business. Agents too, like it's hard. It's hard.
Yes. I always think, how hard is it to send back a standard email that says, thanks, but no thanks? At least then you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yes,
Anyway.
and I am of the same mindset, but then when I look at all the queries I get and if I answered every single query I would never leave my email inbox. It's
Okay,
just,
here's
and
a
I have so
technical
many other
question.
things to do.
Here's a technical question that I've always wondered about, or often wondered about. In Query Manager, is there and you're passing on somebody, do you have to actually write that out every time, or is there an option just to hit pass and then Query Manager automatically does a respond with your little kindly written thanks but no thanks paragraph? Is it still
Yeah, you
manual?
you can you manually have to like you can archive it without replying. Is
Okay.
that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so you can
Like,
archive the query without replying to it, but is there a standard response that you can quickly just, like, click a button, reject, and it'll send out your nicely
yeah.
written rejection?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So if I decide, no, this isn't for me, there's a no button. And then I can have templates written out, and I do have several. It is time saving because we do see
Yeah,
a lot of the same things, a lot of the same
yeah,
reasons. But
yep,
I will generally personalize at least a little bit of it because there might be something different there, right? Like I understand it from that perspective because I've been there too. So I do keep that in mind. But if I was to lead all of my business things with my heart, I don't know.
totally,
It's yeah.
totally.
So yeah,
Yes,
but we can click no and then we can select whatever template it is, or we can type something brand new or whatever. We can change the template for that particular person and send it off. Or if we just don't have time, then we can just hit no and then nothing gets sent out.
okay.
I hate doing that. I hate doing that.
Well, you kinda have to get I hate this phrase, but you kinda have to get hardened into the business a little bit, because it's a tough business. It's tough
Yes.
for writers who are pouring their soul into their book and then looking for an agent to be rejected, a whole bunch of times. There's a thing going
Hmm.
around on Instagram, it's an ad, somebody is selling some course or other, and the whole ad is, um, uh, "The agent got back to me within an hour of me querying her with an offer," which makes me roar with laughter because 'cause I'm thinking, 1, is that agent not does that agent not have anything else to do that they are literally sitting there waiting for a query to come in, and 2, there's no way they read your book in an hour,
No,
so what are they querying? But it gets writers because if you don't
it's
stop
the
and think
dream.
about that information, you're gonna buy that course and then think, "All I have to do is this person got an offer in an hour, so I'll get an offer in an hour." Like, that's not an agent you want. That's all I have to say.
No, exactly. You're that whoever's running that ad is playing on people's emotions because they know how desperately writers want to be chosen, right? We all want to be chosen.
And you
And I
gotta choose
understand
yourself
that.
first
Yes, exactly. I would
before
not
you
want an agent who replies back in an hour. You can't, sorry,
you
you
can't.
should not offer on something that you haven't read the entire manuscript for, right? You have to know what the rest of it's like. You have to know how it ends. And like, you can't do that in an hour. I don't care
No.
who you are. You don't have the time to read a book in an hour. Not as thoroughly as what you would need to make an offer.
No, that's right. And as a writer, going out on query, like when you're trying to get an agent in the first place, you've gotta make up your mind before you send the first query that, "You know what? This is a good book. I believe in this book. This is the best that I can do at this point in my career. My next book will be better because I learned a whole big bunch about writing.
Yeah.
My skill has developed a lot in the process of writing this one, but I'm really happy with this book, and even if 50, 100, 200 agents say no, I'm still proud of the work I've done." So you got to choose yourself first and not sit there hoping somebody else is going to tell you you've done a good job. You've got to be able to tell yourself you've done a good job. That's what I think anyway.
Yes.
Be-
100%.
have the confidence of that. Okay. Um That's all the questions we have time for. We do have a few more, but if anyone has questions, because we will do more Ask Me Anything episodes in future. If you do have a question, if you're on my mailing list, valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle, um, I'm going to go out to you guys first and ask you for your questions first. And those are the ones we'll answer first. So all the good stuff, I'm telling you, is at valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle. That's all I have to say. All right, that wraps it up for this week. If you want Kathleen and I to review your query letter and first 10 pages writing samples, go to storynerd.ca for all the information. To support the show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to join my inner circle, and of course you do, go to valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle. And for more information about Kathleen, head over to kathleenfoxagent.com. agent.com, and that's Fox with 2 X's, for all of her information, her links on editorial services, her agent wish list. And of course, she has a new Substack that you definitely want to subscribe to, and that is called Kat's Keynotes. You can find all that information on KathleenFoxAgent.com. And remember, story theory doesn't have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.